to day 2 of the Live Streaming Summit. My name is Corey Benke. I'm the co-chair of the Live Streaming Summit, and I'm excited to welcome you to day 2. Please put your phones on vibrate as to not interrupt the speakers. Just a friendly little reminder. And it's going to be a good one today. We have starting out with live content at scale.
Fantastic. Thanks, Corey. Well, good morning, everyone. Yeah, I'll get the panelists to introduce themselves in a second, but let me just start by saying, I think, we all agree that live streaming's been here with us for a while now, and I think we know how important it is. I think marketers and brand owners have just started to embrace its potency, its immediacy, the engagement levels that are off the charts, quite frankly, compared to VOD. Just in the last couple of years, my own company, Brandlive, we started as a platform creating training and product events for retailers and brands like Nike and Levi's. In 2014, we did just under 1,000 events. This year, we're going to do 4,000 live events just in the retail channel for these brands. So, I mean, that growth is astonishing, quite frankly. And next year, we'll probably do around 6,000. So we agree that it's important, but how do we execute this at scale? With the quality that's associated with a VOD experience, with the audience metrics that we all need. So we're going to dive into that for the next 45 minutes or so. We'll have about 35 minutes of panel questions and then around 10 minutes of Q&A. So I'd like to start with each of my panelists. If you could introduce yourself, where you're from and what your company does in relation to live, and talk about what scale means to you. We'll start with you, Claudia.
Thanks, Mark. Claudia Barbiero. I am VP of Marketing at LiveView, and with that hat on me, I do two things. One is work with content creators and broadcasters of all shapes and sizes to produce better quality content. And then we also practice what we preach. We can't be in this space, and I can't be a marketer if I'm not also embracing the live video revolution and incorporating that into our marketing campaigns and activities. So when the question of this panel came up in scale, I immediately jumped to the idea of needing to produce more. Whether you're on a social media platform or you're using an OTT or content delivery network, having more and more high quality content is key. It either helps with your algorithms, it helps with your campaign activities, but it also helps with the audience, which is the other side of scale, which is growing that audience consistently. While it's nice to do great big one-time events, that's not necessarily sustainable if you're looking to create a brand for yourself as a content creator. If you were in a business as a production company, you don't want to just do one big flashy event and then can't redo that again and again and again. And then if you're a brand as well, you want to establish a great connection with your audience for the long term. And that's really what we approach. At LiveView, we're maybe a little different than some of the other folks here in that we focus on the technology that helps enable that. It helps to enable the first mile of that live video acquisition and transmission. So think of it in terms of the bandwidth that you need and the ability to use better quality equipment in order to have that same broadcast type experience online. And I think that's enough for
Perfect.
We'll move on to
All right.
others.
Andrew,
Yeah.
you're up.
Andrew Beranbom, I'm the founder and CEO of First Media. We're based in Brooklyn, New York. We are a live event content platform for brands. We basically saw an opportunity. Brands need to be authentic, and thinking through how they're going to break through kind of the attention economy, and seeing that opportunity. For us, scale was how could a brand actually be able to power native branded video programs in kind of a scalable way. So scale is in a systemic, what we call always-on framework, as well as knowing how to engage audiences, off of that content in a kind of scalable native way. And so we kind of have a combination of independent promoters, filmmakers, as well as digital marketers and technologists. And the combination of us are kind of a full-service platform where brands are able to execute these types of initiatives in a pretty unique, scalable way.
Thanks, Andrew. John.
Good morning. I'm John Petrocelli. I'm the founder of Bulldog Digital Media. We are a live streaming company focused on best practices around premium content experiences. I've had about a 15 to 20 year career in live content and live streaming. I kind of got into this. I was working with Prince, who's arguably the most prolific live performer of all time. I built his digital download store. And I realized that seeing him perform, there was a future where people wanted to tune in and enjoy these experiences, which led me to take over a live streaming company that I sold into AEG, and there I led live streaming at a company called AEG Digital Media. We powered the most watched live experiences of all time: Grammys, Oscars, Masters, TED Conference, E3, all of MTV's live events. And prior to that transaction, I had started a conversation with YouTube about why live video might be important to them. One is a way to drive viewers to these experiences in a collective manner, but then to expose them to all the assets that live on the YouTube platform post-event. So we piloted Alicia Keys' concert at an AEG venue in New York, brought to the viewer by American Express. YouTube responded, hey, you were right, very happy. We like the way our artists resonate with the experience and the fans as well as the brand. So we went on to power things like Coachella, Bonnaroo, Rock in Rio, Lollapalooza on the YouTube platform, which led me to believe there was a bigger business emerging. I spun out of AEG, I formed Bulldog. Today we work with brands and helping them really optimize. And those brands are AT&T, Samsung, Nestle, Snickers, Coca-Cola. We work with Facebook. And it's really for us, how do we help transform the viewer, when we say the word scale, into a participant in the experience. So rather than passively watching, they're engaged and now they're sharing it out. We see the audience viewer time grow substantially, which also impacts the overall viewers. Thank you.
Fantastic. Kip.
Hello, I'm Kip Schauer. Welcome, everyone. I'm with Google. Google, we do all kinds of things, right? The reason I'm up here, I'm actually with the Google Cloud, and we have acquired a platform that allows for the live distribution of the content, all the way from acquisition after it's been shot to encoding, packaging. Everything happens on the cloud now, and then all the way to the distribution. So lots of different kind of backgrounds here. From that side, it is, how do I get the content if I have thousands of users or I have millions of users? That application was called Envato. It streamed the Super Bowl back 2, 3, 4 years ago, and Google acquired them about 2 years ago. So really my side is kind of that platform. And then the other thing with Google, when I looked at the topic of this, is all the artificial intelligence that's coming around to be able to potentially create ads on the fly and monetization. Google was a big sponsor of the NCAA this year during the tournament, and there's some really neat videos out there on how they did it, where they had prepared all kinds of assets and had them ready, and then during the first half of a game, all that was plugged into the AI, and then they quickly created advertisements that they were able to run on the live streams during the second half. So obviously with Google I could talk about all kinds of things, but the cloud and the platform is really what I'm here to talk about today.
Fantastic. So when I asked what scale is, no one said, oh, it's 10 million, or it's 100 million, or 50,000 simultaneous streams. So it's interesting, different interpretations of it. So what we're talking about is, if you're in the business, this is actually a really hard thing to do at scale, however we define it, really well. So let's talk about now the topic of what are the hardest things executing your live strategy, whatever the context is. So Claudia, you want to kick off with?
Sure. I think one of the biggest challenges is budget. In order to do a lot more frequent content, let's say you are just looking for, we'll use sports for example, typically you'd be able to do something that has a wired infrastructure in the stadium or where there's a budget and a team to produce it. But if you can scale your productions with easier, more cloud-based technologies, simplifying the equipment, you can then start to cover more and more and more, like the women's lacrosse game that you typically would never have had the budget for, yet there is an audience for it in terms of the fans that actually want to watch what's happening at the school. So budget is a big hurdle in some cases, including even for myself. I can get budget for a big events. But improving the management to say, yeah, it's worthwhile for me to send a team to cover this, or it's worthwhile for me to do this. I have to show ROI. And the more that I can show the return on investment with the equipment or the people that I'm sending out, the better and more frequent I can do my marketing activities.
Who else has a budget problem? It's the first time I've ever heard that.
Lucky you.
No, I get that. What about getting people to show up for the event? Everyone's so used to an on-demand world where it's watch what you want when you want. This idea of having to tune into something or aggregating an audience around that. Andrew, what do you think? Is that a challenge?
Yeah, I mean, I'm driving, actual live tune-in is definitely part of the challenges, and I think there's two things that come to that. One is the content,
Yep.
So, we actually, through working with brands and seeing the challenge in the market, today we're actually launched, you can go to firsttmedia.com, we're launching a live event marketplace. We're the first to aggregate exclusive live event IP into one place so brands can search it. And the idea is we believe that live events can solve that problem as a source of content. It's where cool stuff's happening and brands can create storytelling off of it. And to your second challenge of around, how do I get tune-in? A lot of people made mistakes from, thinking that if I turn the switch on live, people are just gonna show up and say, hey, this is awesome. The reality is, every minute, if you think about just, I mentioned the attention economy, it's something that I'm obsessed with. Every minute over 70,000 hours is watched on Netflix alone. Competing against Netflix, 4 million views is happening on YouTube every minute, right? You're competing against all of that to get a user's attention. So the way we think about it is, how do we TV program? How do we create a pre-event strategy, a live event strategy, and a post-event strategy to continue that storytelling? And so we use lots of short-form content, build up those data audiences in advance, and then knowing how to transfer that data audiences to the live event. And that's been successful for us in driving tune-in.
Very nice, yeah, getting people to show up. We're lucky in our business, a lot of the events are training events, so Nike just says, well 3,000 of you have to turn up, so they're compelled, which makes it easy. When it's a consumer event, it's actually quite stressful because you're suddenly in the audience creation business, which is fascinating. So, John, I mean, you're doing some pretty major festivals and stuff. There's a built-in audience for that already. Is that a challenge still?
Yeah, precisely. What we have found is today's consumer, especially a millennial, values an experience far more than anything else in their lives. And in fact, if they can't be there at these experiences, they want to have a collaborative and participatory broadcast. But to everyone's point, there is a cost to pull these things off. And what we've endeavored to do is talk to Madison Ave, for instance, about their challenges they're facing today. And those challenges are pretty substantial. We found that there were three main pain points that brands have. One is cord cutting, right? So the audience they're trying to reach is not watching Law & Order on Thursday night and sitting through the State Farm ad. They're at these experiences where they want to have a collaborative, participatory experience. Then beyond that, they're also encumbered by ad blockers, right? There are now 615 million devices with ad blockers on them, so traditional ad inventory doesn't get through, banners, display ads. And then more recently, we've seen brands challenged by brand safety. So advertising on a platform, you're next to dubious, nefarious, kind of dangerous content. We've talked to the brands that, live presented, branded content is the solution to all three of those issues. And that's where we start to unlock a media conversation versus a sponsorship conversation. And moreover, live video gives them a deep engagement time with the consumer. And Facebook is a client of ours. When Facebook launched live video, prioritize it, now they're saying people are watching live 3 times longer than non-live. They're also getting 6 times the level of interaction. So going and having that kind of a dialogue seems to change the conversation. And for sure, if you're around a concert or a festival or a premium experience, people want to tune into that conversation, but it's also how you present it. Giving the viewer the ability to change from a particular stage is very compelling to them versus a passive broadcast offering. Moreover, people also want to talk, post, share, comment, and tweet about what they're watching. You have to give them that capability. But we also found that those conversations become not related to the video and they're offensive or they're off topic. So turning on a tool that will aggregate the conversation, but more importantly, curate it. So now the social streams related to the video, we see far more watch time, far more viewership start to happen. And that's where we start to see success, and i.e. what we term as scale, especially for a Madison Ave funded live experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, when you get people to show up, it is actually quite magic. That's why I think we're all invested so heavily in live, getting people simultaneously to share an experience, which is, I think, the key word there. So once you've actually launched your live capability, whatever form that takes, how do you get people, how do you grow it? I think you're starting from a point, whether it's, a set segment or a set number of viewers, but how do you actually grow it from wherever point you start? I mean, Kip, can you share anything from the Google experience? I mean, NCAA obviously is a great starting point, right?
Yeah, I think that question might be better for one of these gentlemen or possibly our marketing team, but from a platform in terms of growing it, what I've found in a lot of our customers that we're working with is one of the bigger challenges of really scaling it is they're taking what's on TV, how do we make it as interesting, quality-wise, playback online, and the ad, being able to monetize it. You were talking about ad blockers, things like that, being able to do the server-side ad insertion where it's just stitched in. But yeah, you know, one of the big challenges there is what rights do we have to that live broadcast that's going on TV? Can I play the same ads? Do I have to replace it? You know, and it's interesting how often sometimes customers, they're playing the video, but there's no ad, and it just goes silent, and it really breaks up a TV stream that you're used to watching and you're seeing ads. So I think the whole server-side ad insertion, that's how their customers are being able to monetize their content, right? And I think the challenge there is how do I make that online experience as seamless as the TV experience, as robust, and that's really what, you know, by moving stuff into the cloud, you get the ability to, for the redundancy, the online, making sure everything's playing correctly. It's that platform that's really critical to make sure they have a good experience.
Wow.
I was just going to say, you know, I'll pick up on the whole idea of building an audience, which I think is where you're going, or at least I think it's where some of the creators out there or brands are looking to, which it's more than just the one-time live event.
Yes.
That's a great way to put a flag in the ground to say, I'm here, I'm providing some interesting content, but the only way to get people coming back and watching and tuning in the same way that they would have with appointment television is to do it consistently. Whether it's consistent quality, you're providing something consistent to them that's of value, and to do it frequently. So it isn't so much like more is better, but in a lot of cases more is better if it's also good quality. You know, you can risk your brand if the actual literal video quality is poor, and obviously if you're just putting out garbage content that doesn't mean anything. So you really do have to look at those two things and then find a way to sustainably do that repeatedly over time. I think a great example is on Facebook. It doesn't matter how many concurrent viewers you have because you will also get additional views over time on the on-demand. But the frequency of live that you put out actually helps you come up more frequently in searches and in different results.
Sure.
So that is an important element. Twitch, for example, which people typically think, oh, that's just for gamers. But to become a Twitch affiliate partner, they don't look for the 30,000 live views. They look for people who consistently have 200 viewers of the live content over time. And if you show that kind of a pattern, they consider you to be a better quality candidate to have them promote your content to make it more discoverable. So it doesn't always have to be about the big numbers right off the bat. It's think about your strategy and how you're delivering it. Are you on the right platform? Are you engaging and actually responding to that? And keep doing that over time to grow.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Yeah. Doing a consistent schedule and keeping to it is the best way to build an audience. For sure.
I mean, Claudia's definitely right. I mean, we power Skull Candy's entire music strategy, and it's a live stream program this year. We're doing 30 plus live stream shows globally. Tonight we actually have one in LA. If you guys are interested in hip hop, you guys come on by. But what we do, we're doing 2 to 3 live streams per month right now, and sometimes more. And what we're doing is filling those gaps with other types of content, right? And so we're giving these brand storylines. Skull Candy's distributing this through all their owned and operated channels, as well as all the artists as influencer channels. And that gives you can't just kind of say, hey, I'm into this for one day anymore. A lot of as John and I both live in this kind of transition of sponsorship in live music. Saying that you're going to be at a festival for 3 days and that's your music strategy for the year is kind of done. If you're going to go build authority, you got to do it in a continuous way. And so we've seen that success considerably.
Yeah, for sure. So when you're talking about growing and building an audience, you've got to be everywhere where they are. Is the proliferation of devices still an issue? Do you still have quality issues like going between the dozen or so key devices that people are watching besides a TV, right? So the Roku, iOS, Android sort of conundrum that we've all had over years, or is that solved largely now?
I guess I could take that one. So
thanks to these guys, they solved it.
On the back end, basically, a company like Google, we go to each one of the vendors and make sure that the software works, and then the playback, they only have to make calls to our SDK.
Yeah.
So we deal with all the different devices, making sure, you know, the latest revs and all that kind of stuff. But then the advertiser or the web page or the app, they just have to make single calls to us. So I think that's pretty much been solved.
Yeah.
There's still a few outliers here and there, kind of older devices, but in
Sure.
general, it's really pretty standardized and not as much of a problem as it used to be.
Fantastic, fantastic. So when you're doing a consistent schedule of live events, that's great, the audience is growing, but as a result of that, you're going to be creating a lot of on-demand assets anyway. So does that still form part of the strategy? Is it a catch-up type scenario, or how does your on-demand strategy support live going forward?
I mean, I can take a
Yeah.
crack at that. We view on-demand and live, you know, it's all part of the continuous story for a brand. And you know, right now it's hard to put media dollars behind live content.
Mm-hmm.
It's a limitation on Google as well as others that we're hoping Facebook will solve for us,
Yeah.
as people are trying to get more eyeballs to the live content. But VOD is, you know, where you can put more of your media strategy behind and drive the types of engagement that you're looking for. And so it's vital, you know, I mean, getting the rights to it is the, especially in music, as John
Absolutely, yeah.
is another conversation, but it's got to be a core part of what you do, right? And so, you know, especially because of the amount of engagement that you're still achieving on live, you know, the NCAA is its own kind of beast.
Yeah.
But, you know, by and large, the types of content, especially from a brand lens, you have to have a VOD strategy.
Yeah, I mean, live content, it might not be evergreen, but it might not be the immediacy of a sporting match, but there's somewhere in between where there's a monetization or engagement, whether it's, you know, the next 7 days or next 3 months or whatever it is. I mean, do you find that, John, with the assets you create, or do you run into the rights issues as well?
You know, in music, there's always rights issues.
Yeah.
You know, we modeled a festival strategy around 3 phases. So the first phase is live. You know, the band's performing multiple times throughout the day. When the headliner finishes, we replay that day 1 or 2 times. So Friday night into Saturday, back on the air with the live lineup the following day. And then the third phase is the VOD window. So a misconception in the music business is, you know, we're really focused on, I think, things like the experience economy and the attention economy. Consumers today are more interested in what's happening as close to real time as possible. So we're not licensing this music for you know, a television show or film in perpetuity, which is a difficult, cumbersome, you know, negotiation with all the rights holders. It's moreover that moment in time, that live replay and that window, maybe 30-day, you know, window of opportunity. Non-music experiences, content can be developed as part of the live experiential experience at a pretty significant low cost point. So it's basically E&G crews doing things like food, fashion, art, culture, film, learning, etc. But you know, the beauty of live in and of itself is once that experience is executed, now you've got content that can live in other windows. And we've seen a lot of success with brands doing ongoing strategies. So that Alicia Keys show we did with American Express gave birth to a series called Unstaged. MX takes an iconic venue, they bring in a big artist who's about to release a record, then they add a director. So a David Lynch or Spike Lee or Terry Gilliam directs John Legend, The Roots, or Arcade Fire, or Mary J. Blige. MX focused more on that series and reached 22 million people. More importantly, the viewers watched for 25 minutes of average watch time. That's watch time that a brand is having a hard time getting 4 seconds of attention today.
That's amazing.
Here they can get, and this is also terrific data back to them. You know, through a video player experience, we can tell them where people are watching from, who is on iOS versus Android. If we're measuring the sentiment on the social stream, we can do things like polling and trivia. Great data comes back to not only the brand, but also potentially the promoter. Years ago, Lollapalooza was only based in Chicago. The promoter took a lot of that data and saw that viewers were watching from all over the world. Today, Lollapalooza is in Chile, Argentina, Brazil, Berlin, and Paris with future expansion plan. So a lot can happen in and around kind of a strategy of how to watch and how to build in your VOD strategy, but more importantly, you can pull significant data back on here's how we're going to plan for the future.
Fantastic, fantastic. Claudia, you mentioned 12 Twitch before, which I think is the sleeping giant of live right now. I think it's phenomenal what's going on that platform. How important is that and the other social platforms compared to your owned and operated sites, if you have that strategy?
Well, I mean, I think we all know that when Facebook opened their API for live video, that kind of transformed the landscape.
Yep.
And now everyone is on board, but Twitch is a different beast. It was born out of live, and kind of ignored by certain market segments as that's just for gamers.
Yeah.
So
and it's not, is it? It's
not, because I think it ties into some of the things that were maybe lightly touched upon, which is this idea of it's not necessarily the traditional advertising or monetization when you look at what brands can do to reach an audience. Of course, there's the usual sponsor or player, and do that typical sort of sports type sponsorship. But there's a lot of different things that you can do on social media as a brand, taking advantage of a live event or live video to organically be a part of it. If it's an interesting fit. There was a live talk show. It actually won an Emmy because of the interaction, because the at-home audience could tell people live on stage what they wanted to ask and do and hear. FedEx Office was a sponsor of it, but it wasn't a traditional sponsorship. Sure, there was a logo and all that fun stuff, but the focus of that talk show was all about entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So it was a real organic fit of brand and live content. So platforms like Twitch kind of open the doors. It'll be interesting to see what happens. So 2.5 billion hours of live content was watched on Twitch last quarter. Over almost half of that content was non-traditional gaming content, meaning it was people outdoors live streaming, it was a craft show, it was
comedy,
exactly. So you're right in terms of sleeping giant, absolutely, absolutely. But then just to touch on that, Twitch is definitely live. In terms of the VOD, there's not the same type of repeat viewership. It's almost like it happens and then it's moved on and gone. Versus the other social platforms where that live event can be a certain length of time. We know the viewership is 3 times as long for something live. But then you have the ability to recut that content and almost create your own VOD advertisements so that you can chunk that video up and that can be digested on a phone really quickly, the 2-minute version of that live event to keep that engagement happening with your fans, until the next live event. So,
sure. Anyone else want to make a comment on social?
Yeah, I mean, social is core to what we do every day. I mean, we view brands as publishers now. I mean, they're competing against everyone else for attention, as we talked about earlier. And so, what we do is create exclusive rights around content and let brands then distribute that out through their owned and operated channels, plus the influencers that we're engaging with as well. The idea is that they're being able to communicate, leveraging that piece of content to their audiences, creating that authority, but also, that's kind of breaking through all the noise. And so, John's used the word premium, we're kind of in this content marketing became a thing, social exploded and brands were like, oh shit, everyone's talking about me, what are they saying? and that's where listening platforms got created, right? And so listening platforms told brands, what they're saying, and then the next inning of kind of social was, hey, I gotta speak to these audiences all day, how do I do that in a kind of scalable way? And so these social publishing platforms came about. Then we kind of got the first inning of these, the next generation of these kind of content marketing platforms, giving people ideas like Contently's and Sprinklers and Percolates. Now we're kind of in this next phase of it's got to be premium, and it's got to be high quality. It's got to be, as close to destination level content as you can imagine. And how do brands do that? They've got to communicate that through social channels. And so, the challenge is what content for what channels, and how do I make that into a cohesive strategy?
And what format as well.
So from Instagram stories all the way through your premium live stream content, with your tentpole, to what types of content do you build in VOD environments? It's got to create a story, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's where brands are still figuring things out, but social's not going away.
No, absolutely not.
Everyone's going like this,
Well, we've got a few more minutes before we dive into some Q&A, but we wanted to give an example. I think Kip's going to talk about the NCAA while I try and figure out the video. Do you want to preview that, or do you want to do the video first?
So it's just, it was an interesting concept of changing your live advertisements on the fly, and it's really the monetization piece. So it's kind of a little different than we were talking about here, but when at scale, How can you make decisions using artificial intelligence to change the message that's going out to your customers, to increase, the attentiveness, how many people are watching it, the percentage of interaction. So, do you have the video?
I believe
it's really
so.
kind of a
Let's see what happens when I
self-contained
press play.
video, and it.
March Madness.
I can see it. It looks really good.
Did plug it?
See the beauty of live, right? Nothing always goes.
Yeah, and then
Talking, keep moving, keep dancing.
Yeah, exactly.
Until the video catches up.
yeah, and on one topic to kind of wrap a couple things together that we didn't talk about, we're starting to see where customers have their live streams going, they have all their video on demand content, but they have so much video on demand content, they're starting to create new channels with basically a virtual live linear. So you're scheduling all your video on demand content, so it plays like a live channel. I click on it, it looks like a live channel, but it's allowing our customers to have more targeted channels to their audience. And we're starting to see some real interest in that type of technology. But yeah, this is kind of, it's just sort of a self-contained, really what Google did with the NCAA on a big
We're
sponsorship.
showing businesses how Google Cloud can turn data into knowledge. To do this, we made the world's first ever real-time predictive TV spots live in front of millions of viewers. This meant reinventing the commercial making process and making ads faster than anyone's made before. We started by producing hundreds of pre-made assets to cover any game situation Google Cloud might predict, like the number of rebounds, total three-pointers, and assists, building a toolkit capable of creating nearly 100,000 unique spots. Then we headed to the Final Four. We set up a war room outside the arena where we gathered the first half stats and using artificial intelligence made a prediction about the second half. We fed the prediction into a custom-built Google Cloud-powered app, which not only made it possible to assemble, edit, render, and traffic a television spot directly to the network in less than 10 minutes, but change our assets in real time, allowing us to show the logos of the teams playing, their colors, names, the current score, and our live prediction. A custom spot ran moments later. So, how did we do? 43 million viewers witnessed 6 insanely accurate game predictions, including one that was right on the nose. The campaign drove a 91% lift in product interest, a 42% increase in brand search volume, 30% more new site visits, with a 19% increase in time spent. In the end, we developed an entirely new way to create and traffic TV spots, and got businesses everywhere to learn what's possible with data and Google Cloud.
So really on that, it's about trying to pull all the different data together so that you have access to it. Within a lot of companies, all that data is in silos, right? But if you can bring it all together and start to make decisions on it,
got her DNA results and found
I think
out she's
it's
built
really going to help the whole live business attract attention. There's lots of articles on Netflix about how they use data as well. So
Fantastic. That was really cool. Yeah, no, that's certainly an impressive use of AI in real-time situations. So I'm going to open it up for Q&A now. We have about 10 minutes left. So if anyone, we don't have a microphone today, so if you just call the question out and I'll repeat it. So who'd like to open with a question?
I have a question for John.
Yep.
So you talked about curated chats during shows.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about large
So the question was, how do you curate the topics and all the chatter that goes on during a live event?
So this is very important to brands, right? We can't have people saying American Express sucks, I love MasterCard in their branded experience, or other kind of off-topic conversations. So it's two things. One, it's an automated tool set, so we filter out naughty words. The brands can train them. Hey, here's how you can drive the conversation. They can add cues and so forth. What we have found is if it's just crazy hyper scroll outside of esports, people become very disinterested in the social component. They start to pull away. If the conversation is related to the video, they're far, far more engaged. And it's also now in a readable kind of context. That becomes a collaborative kind of participatory experience. So one, they're leaning in, they're far more engaged. Two, they're sharing it out. They're saying, hey, Kip, I'm watching this great performance by Kendrick Lamar brought to, by Adidas. Come have this experience with me. And socials, I think as Andrew pointed out, it's a big, big part of this. People want, and especially if these experiences are living or they're emanating from social platforms. We've had brands place the experience in multiple places. I've done this with Coke and Snickers and AT&T, and they can also come back to a pretty compelling hub, and that hub could have an additional camera feed. It could have a exclusive conversation with one of the performers, and that seems to be a big success for the brands. But clearly, we found, and having done hundreds and hundreds of shows on YouTube, people don't want all that noise. They actually want to have a dialogue about what they're watching, and it's a better experience for the performer, artist, brand, viewer, and even the platform, and that seems to have been a real big success point.
I think the bottom line is you have to plan to actually have someone produce that aspect. It's part of your production now. Otherwise, why are you?
You can't let machine learning do it all either, right? It's got to have a human.
The tools are great, but someone needs to be leading that charge. You can't ask your existing technical team who's producing the event to also do that. It really is a new role.
Conversely, we've seen shows with the biggest talent in the world, like Lady Gaga and Drake, with no social. So people come and watch, and then they leave. They don't stick around. And the other extreme is just unfiltered, jumbled nonsense, and that really kind of stunts the watch time.
So I'm a bit curious about the toolkit itself. We've had success in cherry picking comments for curation, and there's obviously like you said, there's filters for words and filtering things out. Are there any other tools that you've been able to implement to steer the conversation in the right direction?
Yeah, people like you call the term gamification, right? So if they can do things like polling and trivia. I can give you two examples. The year before last, Snickers did a live commercial in the third quarter of the Super Bowl. They decided to augment that with this 36-hour continuous live stream Thursday into Friday. That was on Facebook and Twitter and SnickersLive.com. So essentially had YouTube stars, NFL players, celebrities. They even allowed the audience. So if you saw the commercials, Adam Driver is on a Western saloon and he knocks over. He doesn't think the commercial's rolling, and the whole thing implodes and catches on fire. The viewers, during some of the things that could happen in that 36-hour pre-show, could actually pick the name of the saloon in the background. So that type of cool interactivity. And then this year, the NFL allowed the teams to celebrate the touchdowns. So at the Pro Bowl in February, the NFL hired Keegan-Michael Key. He did this live variety show that we live streamed on Facebook. And the audience there were 4 finalists. The audience could vote in real time who the winner would be to be announced at the Super Bowl the following week. So that gets watch times tend to expand as well as viewership. So turning on those types of features, even a photo wall, again, that's curated. You could be either at the show or you're watching at home, having a viewing experience. So now you've got these multiple channels of video, you've got social, polling, trivia, and something like a photo wall. And even take it a step further, with Coca-Cola, we did a massive music festival. And we're live in these 3 channels Saturday and Sunday. About 80 bands performing, 12-hour days. We allowed the viewer to go into the live schedule widget and enter their mobile number. So you'd say, hey, I'm Andrew, and I'm a fan of Prophets of Rage, Jake Bugg, and G-Eazy. You get an SMS push notification from the brand that says, hey, the artists that you want to see, they're coming on Channel 2 in 5 minutes, tune in and watch. Coke, super successful. The average watch time on mobile for that festival was 29 minutes, and desktop was 113 minutes. And this is millions of people watching on Coke's own property, but also extended out to their social platforms.
Fantastic. Any other questions? We've got a couple minutes left.
What tool did you use to do that?
Pardon?
What tool did you use to do that?
It's our tool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Who's next? Yep.
A little bit about server-side ads versus sponsored, maybe particularly for live events, and trying to steer a brand towards a certain thing. What seems to work, what seems to not work.
Yeah, so server-side ads versus sponsored.
I mean, I think it goes down to business goals, you know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, with server-side ads, you're basically inserting kind of a brand message within the content, right? And it's kind of, it still takes the same format and experience as a display ad, you know, of sorts, right? It's savvier in where and when it appears, versus kind of them owning the sponsorship content, right? Where they're kind of more looking to be natively engaged and they're trying to collect data. And so on the server side, ad insertion, not getting as much data, user data, that they can then leverage in the future. That's kind of the way I think about it.
Very cool. Sir, behind it, do you have a question? Yep, go ahead.
What does your pregame strategy look like to get eyeballs on the content if it's not, a huge music concert
Yeah.
or festival?
And that applies across everything. What's the pre-game strategy for audience building, getting people to tune in? Who wants to take that one?
We try to tell the brands we're providing watch and engagement time that's pretty much unachievable in any other forms of advertising. And what we've seen is they've actually gotten pretty smart about things like digital and social and online consumption. So it's up to them. They can pre-buy media. If they get a big success story is getting someone who is an influencer to post and comment and drive traffic. That seems to really drive viewership all around. And in general, too, you've got to have compelling content. I think someone pointed out, too, doing this on a consistent basis, quarterly, monthly, bi-weekly, now the viewers start to realize, T-Mobile's going to bring me some really interesting stuff on an ongoing basis, and inviting the viewers back, back to do that. That seems to be key to watch time. But again, moreover, what we see is if you're not allowing the viewer to transform themselves into a participant, A, they're probably not going to watch too long, and B, they're probably not going to come back. And this is pretty elementary, easy stuff to do. We've been doing it for a long time, but I'm speaking through the lens of a marketer, right? Who would this isn't, of paramount importance to them. But those factors all seem to contribute to, hey, here's how we can drive audience. And of course, you want to do this at scale, right? It can't be a ridiculous, cost-prohibitive expenditure to get into this business. But again, if you compare this to traditional spends and things like 30-second on-demand television ads, it's a fraction of those spends with a much higher return, especially in terms of engagement time.
So just to piggyback on that too, don't forget about the basic stuff too, which is wait for the audience to build before the live event actually starts.
Yeah.
So even from a production standpoint, doing that 10 minutes of pre-show before the show, but it's part of the show, telling people what they're going to see on the show and what's coming up on the show, gives people a chance to kind of tune in, ramp up, and be ready for when you actually do start it, even though you're already live. And it gives chance for that social aspect. Oh my God, they're about to go on. People can actually start to reshare. So people tune in and they don't feel like they've missed the first most important beginning part of it.
The dirtier side of that is that it takes about 30 minutes for the ad service to kick in. And so, you basically try to sandbag, that time. So because you're not allowed to turn ads on until the second it's turned on. And so you're kind of sandbagging that. But, for us, for a pre-event, we're starting our campaigns about 5 days in advance, starting to educate the audiences, build that data. We're pushing media behind, influencers as well as the brands own and operate channels. And we're trying to drive notifications. And so each of the platforms has notification features. And so we're also trying to capture email as all part of that so that we can then say, hey, we're about to go live. And so it's kind of the first KPI is kind of email capture and notification generation and using all of that pre-event strategy to do that.
Fantastic. Just a quick one. We've got time for one more really quick one.
For Claudia, so you mentioned, you touched on storytelling aspect and production. A lot of live video streams, they don't have that. So the question is, can you expand on it?
Yeah, that's a session in and of itself, I think. But in yes and no. I think some of the most successful, let's call them organic or gritty streams, actually do have an element of production to them or a plan. So if you think of some of these like in real life streamers that stream for 13, 14 hours a day, which can be heaven for some of these for brand engagement. They're successful and they get good viewers and a great audience when they do have a relative plan. But the idea and the feeling is it's very organic and it's all sort of happening spontaneously. So I say no matter what the content focus is, there still has to be a scope. And then especially if you are trying to tell a story either with that live show or the live activity, and then you're going to grow that over time, you absolutely are producing or approaching the production of that live stream not just as I'm flipping on my phone. I want to give people that feeling of this was instantaneous and I'm doing a quick selfie stream, but you really do have to look at it as just as important as any other marketing campaign you have. If I'm doing a print campaign, which God knows does anybody even do those anymore, but you proofread, you're doing color correction, you're looking at every aspect of that entirety. That live video needs to be treated the same way, which is, is this on message, is this telling the right story, and you have to think about it. It's okay for it to be gritty, kind of like these panels can be sometimes, and we'll see where they go, but you still should have a game plan. It's just important for your audience to remember who you are too and what the voice of your content is. You don't want to get lost in always trying to just do the new. You have to think about over time, does that reflect what you're trying to convey to your fans, your audience, your customers?
Excellent, thanks a lot. So our game plan says we have to wrap it up right here, but I'm sure you'll be able to find the other panelists throughout the morning to ask any more questions. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Claudia, Andrew, John, Kip.